Hello friends, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. I'm eager to be feeling like myself again, so I am easing myself slowly back into the kitchen and doing some cooking. I haven't been cooking very often, but when I have been cooking, I've wanted to record and share with you guys. I think one thing that I'm really eager to get back into is my routine. Everything has just been so thrown off lately from surgery, even before surgery, where I was trying to prepare for the surgery and recovery. My whole routine is just completely thrown off, and I am really eager to get back to my normal, or my new normal, which I'm pretty excited about. But one thing that I've really been missing is breakfast. I've missed waking up and making breakfast for the kids before school, so that is what I'm getting into today, and I'm not doing anything that is going to cause me to be in the kitchen for a while. That's kind of been my goal throughout this week is, one, I wanted to slowly get back into the kitchen and make a couple of things, but those things, I kind of gave myself a couple of rules. I wanted them to be simple enough or allow me to kind of go in spurts. So I wanted something to throw in the crock pot, for instance, or something that I can let rise and come back to, allowing me to take plenty of breaks in between. So that was kind of my goal for the week, was to get into the kitchen a little bit, but also be able to allow myself to have plenty of breaks in between. So this morning for breakfast, I am doing some homemade biscuits and gravy. I'm doing just some sausage patties from the freezer and then some scrambled eggs, keeping it very simple but really delicious. Now this biscuit dough that I am making is so super simple. This is something that I have over the years come back to over and over and over again. It has very few ingredients and takes hardly any time to come together, and so I think that is why I continuously come back to this recipe. So I am having the recipe, but it is just 2 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, half a cup of butter that I grated in, and then about 3/4 of a cup of milk. And I say about for the milk because sometimes if the dough is too dry, I'll go back in and add just a tad more in order to get the dough to the consistency that I'm wanting. I usually don't need, that's not usually like too much. It's usually just a little bit less. And so then I'll go in and add in just a little tiny bit more. So about 3/4 of a cup of milk. And like I said, I just have this recipe, so the recipe usually is doubled, and it makes a much larger quantity, but because I'm just making this for myself and the kids for breakfast, I just have the recipe. So I mixed all the ingredients together, I formed a big dough ball, and then I cut it into 8 pieces. I made them into biscuit shape. You don't have to do that. You can, honestly, I usually, whenever I'm making this whole recipe, instead of just half, I'll do them on a large rectangular baking sheet, and then I just put the entire dough thing, I roll it out into a big rectangle, and then I put it onto the baking sheet, and then I just I just cut it, but I keep them all together. So, and then I bake them like that, and then they can easily be pulled apart once they're done baking. So that's usually how I do it. I usually do it into like little square shapes, but here I wanted them to go in the cast iron, so I made them into circles, and I popped those into the oven. So for this, I'm just making the gravy now. I usually will make like a sausage gravy. I don't have any of that on hand though, so I'm just making a normal white gravy, and I wanted to mix it up just slightly, so you will see me slowly adding in milk, but then also slowly adding in a little bit of broth. So I'm using a beef broth just to kind of give it a little bit different of a flavor, and I'm just slowly adding both of those in to make sure that it's the consistency that I'm wanting. So once I got the gravy all done, I put it to the side, and I'm going to start on making some scrambled eggs. One thing I never knew until I was well into adulthood is when you're making biscuits, they rise a lot better when you have them touching. Like when you're putting the dough into the pan, for instance, you have them touching and they rise so much more beautifully. So that is what I made sure I did. I didn't necessarily have them spaced out. They were all touching in some sort of way to give them that really beautiful rise. So here's how breakfast turned out. It was simple, but like I said, delicious. These last few weeks have been fairly odd. I feel like I'm sitting here at the table and only working with Theo for school. Lincoln was sick. We've had an illness going through the household, and so it was just super weird. My older two, they had finished up early, and then Lincoln, he started working on his math, but it just was not going well, so I had him go lay down, and it was just me and Theo doing school at the table. It was super weird. It's just been a very odd couple of weeks. I'm getting back into the kitchen and I'm going to get a head start on dinner. And like I said, this is another one of those meals, one that I have the ingredients for because I am still working on having all the ingredients for, I think it's been like a month now where I shopped for the entire month. So I'm using the ingredients that I have on hand, but also making meals that allow me to have time to rest in between. So I have this beef roast that I have now seared on both sides. I'm putting all the juices from that into the crock pot because I believe the recipe called for some like olive oil or something. I just used the oil that I had in the pan, and then I am putting the roast in there, and then I'm just topping it with all these ingredients. So I've been referring to this recipe as Italian beef sandwiches, and that was partly because that's what my mother-in-law called them, but also because I believe it's like a Mississippi pot roast. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've made them in the past, but I don't remember all the ingredients in particular. So I believe it's like, if not exactly the same as a Mississippi pot roast, it's like really, really similar. So, however, if I call it a Mississippi pot roast, not all my children will eat it because they claim to not like, some of them really love it, but not all of them. However, I've noticed when I call it an Italian beef sandwich, they actually all will eat it. So I am making Italian beef sandwiches, and I will put the recipe down below in the description box if you're wanting to try it for yourself. This is one of those recipes that is super easy. You can throw it in the crock pot. You can cook it on the stove. I'm sure you can even cook it in the oven, and it cooks really low and slow. It's one of those forget about it meals. And when you come in here in the evening time, dinner is all done, and it is absolutely delicious too. So this is totally a meal that has been up my alley here lately. I love the taste of it. You don't have to sear it beforehand, but I really love the added flavor that it has. So I always sear it beforehand, and then like I said, I'm just going to put it in the crock pot and let it go low and slow all day long until dinner time. But I have definitely cooked it on the stove too, when I didn't have as much time. I'm not sure if I've talked about it in a previous video or not, but I have been doing a bunch of like gardening in my kitchen because I'm unable to add anything outside yet. I think we've hit like our frost dates and stuff. I think we're good in terms of that because it has been really warm here, but I'm still unable due to my restrictions to actually garden. And so I've been getting like seeds and just slowly growing stuff in these little pods, and I'm hoping that I can then like transfer them to the garden whenever I'm able to actually do that. So A lot of these are flowers and herbs, but I also do have some peppers in there, so I'm hoping that they all hold up before we can plant them in the garden. Here's how dinner is going in the crock pot. Still has a couple more hours, but I like to kind of check on it to make sure it has all the juices and stuff that it needs. So I checked on that, and that is doing really well. I am moving on to dicing up some potatoes that I'm going to make into garlic potatoes. Now, I'm curious if anyone else has a meal or a dish that kind of symbolizes summer or warmer weather for them. If I had to choose one dish, this would be it. This is something that it just feels like summertime because my mom has made this my entire life, and she always made it during the summer. So I don't really remember it ever during the winter or fall. I just remember going to cookouts and stuff like that, and she would always make these garlic potatoes. So something that symbolizes warmer weather and spring and summer for me is these garlic potatoes. They are always something that she brought to barbecues because they are so simple to make, but they are a complete crowd pleaser. So I am making those. You usually roast them in the oven really low and slow for like several hours. However, I do not have that time, so I am just putting them on the stove, and I'm kind of roasting them a little bit lower. So it's kind of like a mix between my mom's garlic potatoes and like fried potatoes. So you use a bunch of garlic, you use butter. I usually cut up for like this quantity, which is a pretty decent quantity. This pan is huge. So for this quantity, I usually use about a stick of butter that I dice up, and salt, pepper, and the diced potatoes, and that is pretty much it. You just let them cook low and slow, and this is how they end up turning out. They are one of my favorite things to have, and like I said, they're a symbol of the warmer weather ahead. But I'm curious if you have one of those dishes or those meals that symbolize warmer weather or summer for you. Let me know down below in the comments because I always love hearing the different things that you guys make. Now, like I said, I'm going to be serving these on buns, and honestly, I had a really hard time finding good buns. You don't want the ones that are like traditional hot dog and hamburger buns because with the juices, they just fall apart. You want some really good, sturdy, like rolls. However, most places that are around me, I had a really hard time finding them. So I think these are like French type of rolls. I'm not really sure. I found them at Walmart and it was kind of on a whim. So I cut those in half, and this is how dinner turned out. Like I said, this is one of my favorites, and I think it is so similar to a Mississippi pot roast, but if I call it that, not all of my kids will eat it. So these are our version of Italian beef sandwiches with some garlic potatoes. This is another morning and I am back in the kitchen. Now I am working on dinner. I'm starting very early again with another meal that I can kind of space out throughout the day. However, I ended up hitting another obstacle. So we host every single year for Easter at our house. It's just we have usually most of the kids, and then we usually have like other kids that come. We do an Easter egg hunt, we do, a big variety of food and all that kind of stuff. We usually host Easter. However, I had just had surgery the week before, so we didn't really know what we were really doing. However, we ended up still hosting Easter, but basically my mom and my aunt, everybody kind of came together and contributed the meal, and we just kept it very low key. So we didn't do the huge Easter egg hunt and all that kind of stuff, but we still hosted Easter at our house. And towards the end, before everybody left, my mom and aunt, again, they helped clean up the whole kitchen and kind of wrap up leftovers. And I'm so grateful for everything that they came over, and they really gave us such a wonderful Easter. And I just feel incredibly grateful for all the help that they have given us. So anyway, they wrapped up all the leftovers and all that, and they didn't end up taking a ton home. Usually we send people home with like, little doggy bags or whatever of leftovers so they can enjoy some later. However, we were left with so much leftovers just because I don't think a lot of people took them. I think some people did, but we just didn't have as many people as normal. And we had so much ham. Like, I cannot even stress, like, we had so much ham. So one of the things that I have been doing throughout this week is trying to use up all that ham. And I know what you're thinking. Why don't I just make a huge pot of ham and beans? I feel like that is a total normal thing that most people do after Easter. They make a huge pot of ham and beans because they have all the stuff for that. I have never liked ham and beans. I have tried so many times to like it. My husband loves ham and beans, and that's like a thing that he always is like, oh, that would be great. I cannot, for the life of me, bring myself to make ham and beans. I'm the worst. I am the problem. I get it. But so I was trying other things, and I came across different recipes. One of them was a ham pot pie. And I have never heard of that, never tried it, but my family likes pot pies, so that is what I'm going to be making today, was a ham pot pie. And it's basically the same as a normal pot pie, but you just add in ham. So I was able to use a good amount of ham, and right now I am making the crust for the pot pie. And if you noticed, I was kind of talking back and forth. Lincoln, he came back in. He was feeling good at this point. So he was working on some of his math and kind of finishing up some lessons while I was making the dough for this. So what I started off doing was, in the morning, I came in and I made my croissant dough. I swear it is so similar to the Pillsbury croissant dough. So if that's something you're looking for, I'll have the recipe down below in the description box for you to try. It is exactly the same. I allowed my dough to rise for a couple of hours after I put it together. So it has been a couple of hours. We have wrapped up school and done everything we needed to do. We've rested plenty in between, and I'm back in the kitchen, and now I'm getting to the ham. So like I said, I'm just dicing up ham, and I think I needed like 3-ish cups of it. And I say ish because as I was doing it, I was kind of just adding as I go, working with the ingredients that I had on hand, and I wanted to make a big amount of it to feed my family and have some leftovers and stuff. So I believe the recipe called for 3 cups, but I added a little bit more. So, and again, I wanted to kind of get rid of the ham. I ended up, so I also made it was a vintage ham, a salad. That's what it was called. Like a ham salad. And that was really good. I really enjoyed that. So we had that for like lunch one day. I made a big, like Tupperware of ham salad, and we had that with like crackers, and that was actually really good. And then I used some of it for this recipe, and then my mom she took it for, I think she's making ham and beans. So I think that's what she said she was doing, because she also took the bone from the ham, and I believe she's making ham and beans. So maybe Kyle will end up getting some leftovers of that. I'm sure he would enjoy. So I also had a little dog in the kitchen with me that was loving when I dropped the ham, and so I was giving him little bites of ham as I was cutting it too. So anyway, that's all I'm doing. I'm cutting the ham, and then I'm going to slowly assemble the pot pie. And like I said, it's exactly like a normal pot pie. You could also, I was talking to my mom about it, you could do like cream of chicken if you wanted, or any of the cream ofs that you have. I chose to just kind of do it by scratch because I didn't have a whole bunch. I'm still working with that grocery haul, and things are kind of starting to dwindle in the pantry and freezer. So I'm just working with what I have. And so I ended up making the pot pie from scratch. But if you wanted to kind of do an easier route and use like cream of chicken or cream of mushroom or whatever you have, you could totally do that instead of doing it like completely from scratch. So I've chopped up the vegetables, and I'm going to get them starting to cook in this pan with a little bit of butter before we add in the other ingredients. I'm going to take the vegetables now that they've cooked for a couple of minutes and put them aside because I'm wanting to start on the cream mixture, and I don't want the vegetables to like cook too much in the cream mixture and kind of just get soggy. So I'm putting those aside, and I'm going to use the same pan to make that cream base that is often in pot pies. I'm starting with adding the ham that I chopped up and putting that into the bottom of this pan, and then I'm going to add flour on top of it and kind of mix it and get it fully coated. I don't know why I do it this way. I don't know if other people do, but I have always done like gravy like this, and it just works so much easier for me. Whenever I'm making like sausage gravy, I always will cook the sausage, and then when it's done, I coat it in flour, and then I slowly add whatever liquids I'm using. So this is actually bacon grease. I needed about a tablespoon of bacon grease, so I added of oil. I use bacon grease, but I think that's because I didn't have any oil, and I figured it would probably add to the flavor. So I did about a tablespoon of bacon grease, and then I let that cook for maybe a minute and just kind of stirred it. And now you're going to see me slowly adding in my liquids to create that nice cream base and get to a consistency that I was wanting. So first I slowly added in a couple cups of the cream, and sometimes I do that actually the other way around, but I don't think it really ends up mattering. So I added in a couple cups of cream very slowly, and now I'm going to start adding in, I believe it was 2 cups of chicken broth. So I slowly start adding that in, and again, I'm just bringing it to a simmer. I add in a little bit more. I stir that in, just getting to a consistency that I'm wanting for the pot pies. Once I get to a really good consistency, I will start adding in the vegetables. Now, for this, I usually will use just an entire bag of these mixed vegetables, but I had only a quarter of a bag left. I did not realize that Kyle had used them in like a recipe, and he had used majority of the bag, but there was only like maybe half a cup left, maybe only a quarter. So what I did was I chopped up some green beans and I chopped up some carrots and stuff like that, and I'm adding that in with it to kind of really bulk it up and fill it up. Just using, again, whatever I had on hand. So if you have other stuff on hand, you can totally throw that in. Another thing that I had on hand was those garlic potatoes. So we had just a little bit left over, maybe a cup or two. And so here's those potatoes that we had left over from I believe the night before or 2 nights before. And I am going to use those because I have them on hand. So I put those into the mixture, and that also that created a really great addition. I was pretty glad that I thought of that last second. You could also use just some diced up potatoes if you have them. You can use canned potatoes, whatever you have on hand. You don't even have to use potatoes if you don't want to. But the point of this is just use whatever you have on hand, because there's no reason to, go out to the store and have to buy every single ingredient if you have the stuff on hand already. So that is what I am doing, and it ends up working out perfectly. I'm still, again, adding in slowly the cream or the broth and bringing it to a really good consistency. So once I, again, achieve that, then I added in about a cup of cheddar cheese, and then I'm adding salt and pepper. I'll mix that up, and then I'm going to put it in a big casserole dish and make one big pot pie. Now you can do this in a couple of different dishes. I chose to try to limit my dishes, so I am doing one big pan, and as you can see, it's pretty full. My only recommendation for this is to make sure that you have a larger baking sheet underneath in the oven, because if it is as full as mine, it will bubble over. So another thing that I want to add, if you are making it with the dough that I have, so I was not thinking, this usually makes quite a bit of croissants, and I should have halved the dough. It made it very thick. I mean, it was still very delicious, but it was a super thick dough, and I should have halved it and then, rolled it out and put it over top. So if you're planning on doing this method, just make it a little thinner, because I knew when I was putting it on there that that's pretty thick, but I didn't really want to bother with it. So I ended up just, calling it fine and cutting off the excess and dealing with that. But that was my only thing that I would change, is halving that dough. And then, probably using that half to make little croissants or something on the side. I ended up taking this dough that I'm cutting off and making a really large croissant. Not even a croissant, it was like a loaf. But I made that, and, the kids enjoyed that the next morning for breakfast. So it ended up working out, but it made this pot pie really, really thick. It was half crust and half of the inside stuff. So anyway, it ended up being very good. I would definitely make this again. And it was nice to have somewhat of a different recipe to use for the leftover ham and any leftover ingredients I had. So I definitely do it. The only difference would be halving the dough and having it a little bit thinner on top. Another really great option for this, if maybe you're wanting to put some of this in the freezer, because it does make a really good quantity of it, is you can do you can either make the pie crust, or you can buy I think there's 2 or 3 that comes in those packs in the freezer section at Walmart. You could evenly distribute this into those packs, and then be able to, put a crust over it. You could use the Pillsbury. I've seen the croissants, you could do that if you didn't want to make it, but you can have some of these in the freezer for later on. It really makes a huge quantity, and it's good to have on hand to just pull out and pop in the freezer or pop in the oven for a really quick dinner. Anyway, this is how dinner turned out. It was a delicious meal using all the leftovers that we had on hand. But this is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.